Okay, we're going to give folks a few minutes to join us. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I am Stephanie Jones, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Cultural Heritage Economic Alliance, CHEA for short. You all may also know me from the National Blacks in Travel and Tourism Collaborative, which falls under CHEA. So just to help you make the connection. Today, I'm really excited because we are going to be focusing on cultural heritage tourism. I believe this is a very important conversation and timely conversation as we look at what's happening around the world as it relates to social and racial injustices. I think this is an opportunity for the industry to really look at cultural heritage tourism from a new lens. And I'm really excited that you will be hearing from some of the top cultural heritage tourism thought leaders from across the US as well as across the globe who are with us today, and we'll be sharing various perspectives on cultural heritage tourism with our audience today. I also want to acknowledge and say thank you very much to Visit Lauderdale for sponsoring today's webinar, and we appreciate their support. So thank you very much, Visit Lauderdale. What I'd like to do now is I am going to introduce our distinguished panelists to you all, and then you will have an opportunity to hear from each of them as they will be sharing their screen and sharing a presentation, again, to help you gain better insights about cultural heritage tourism so that you can hopefully apply what we share with you to your business, to your destination, within your government organization, or if you're not familiar with cultural heritage tourism, you will again just gain a better understanding of what it is and why it's important and how it benefits all the various key stakeholders within destinations. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce, and again, you will hear from each of them a little later, but I'm really excited to have on today's webinar, Carol Hay. Go ahead and wave, Carol. Carol is the founder and CEO for McKinsey Gale Unlimited, which is a global tourism marketing agency based out of the UK. Thank you for joining us, Carol.
Thank you.
I'm also excited to have with us Richard Peterson, who's the president and CEO of the U.S. Cultural and Heritage Marketing Council, as well as the publisher for The Cultural Traveler. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Good morning.
Okay. And also we have with us Diana McIntyre Pike. She's the president and CEO for the Country Style Community Tourism Network, doing work in Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean. Hello, Diana. You're on mute. Okay. And then we also have with us Ella Bekesi. And Ella's the co-founder for the Heritage Education Network, Belize. And she's based out of the Hungary area, but she does a lot of her work in Central America, Belize. So welcome to each of our panelists. And again, you each will have an opportunity to really dive into cultural heritage tourism from your various perspectives based on the work that you do within your countries and with your various stakeholders. But before we dive in and hear from our panelists, I don't want to assume that everyone that's joining us today understands or is aware of what cultural heritage tourism is. So I'd like to share my screen and just share a couple slides just so that we're all on the same page. So bear with me 1 second as I pull up my presentation and share my screen. Okay, so what is cultural heritage tourism? So the National Trust for Historic Preservation defines cultural heritage tourism as travel to experience the places, the artifacts, and activities that authentically represent the stories and people of the past and present, including cultural, historic, and natural resources. I think that gives a pretty adequate description, although there are many more if you do some research on your own. So what are the benefits of cultural heritage tourism? So one of the principal objectives of cultural heritage tourism is collaboration, which is key, because that's why we're here today. As cultural heritage tourism thought leaders, we are collaborating to really bring some valuable information to our audience today. So collaborating with local organizations and the public to develop sustainable economies. Tourism creates jobs, as we know, and although we understand that our industry is undergoing some major challenges right now, I do believe that we all are hopeful that the industry will rebound and we will be able to replace those jobs that have been lost, and new business opportunities will rebound as well for all of the stakeholders within the industry. It protects natural and cultural resources, which improve the quality of life for residents and travelers who participate in the services and attractions. Heritage tourism also promotes community pride by allowing people to work together to enhance economic and cultural development through distinct community opportunities. Studies show that travelers are more apt to visit places with a strong community identity. And that's very, very important. So again, I wanted to make certain we all start off on the same page with understanding what cultural heritage tourism is and what are the benefits. But again, you will hear more specifically from our panelists about various perspectives of cultural heritage tourism. So now it is my pleasure to share the screen now with Mr. Richard Peterson. Richard, take it over.
Well, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that everything looks good on your end there, team. Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again. I'm Richard Peterson, and I'm happy to welcome you all this morning virtually from wherever you are around the world. And we do have a global audience with us, which is wonderful. I am the president and CEO of the U.S. Cultural Heritage Marketing Council, and I'm proud to be a part of the program here today with CHEA. We'll get right into it. As we talk about the cultural and heritage economic impacts, cultural and heritage tourism, it's really all about also the economic impacts that it brings to communities and their residents alike. And we're going to speak to that here today, but also how it impacts local businesses, as Stephanie just mentioned. In our world today, there's really a much broader view that's being taken, as we all know, because we're all having to adjust to the shifting consumer and visitor sentiments that are really all over the board right now, no matter where you are in this global shift that we're now living in a current COVID-19 world. We don't call it post-COVID recovery, it's current COVID recovery. And assessing those short and long-term goals are really shifting as well for organizations as well as for their businesses and partners. So as we're building plans and connecting to industry partners and organizations, what I'll be sharing today is more of a national purview, and with the assembled group here today, you're also going to get an international perspective as well. So an introduction, really a wide lens perspective is really important. And here's one Here's one example. In this image, you see the beautiful San Francisco Bay, which I'm really happy to call San Francisco home, a cultural mecca unto itself. And there in the left-hand quadrant of the bay is Alcatraz, which is still closed today because of COVID-19. And as a national park, it's really impacted by all the activities and programs that are going on, but tourism will come back. Tourism is resilient, and we look forward to helping everyone, achieve those goals. But what are those cultural insights to know about the, the national cultural traveler and the cultural perspectives? That within the cultural world, leisure travelers make up, cultural heritage travelers make up 8 out of 10 travelers in that market base. Last year, their average spend was nearly $1,500 per person now per spend trip. We know that these numbers will adjust as we go through consumer sentiment studies and look at the new emerging process of spend based upon how people will now have a much more closer shift to travel and cultural experiences closer to home in their regional areas or in their own countries because of the inability or the access to travel right now being limited, because as 67% of the trips were from out of state, we're now seeing that that's also shifting as well. So as you follow up with us in the weeks and months to come through CHEA, you'll see that some of these numbers are going to shift just because of the consumer sentiment and spend. Also, what was really exciting over the last year is to see that 4 out of 10 travelers are really affluent, meaning their average income is over $100,000 for their own income, let alone friends and family relatives that are traveling with them. And they stay an average of 5 nights, which is above the US national average, which is really important. And as communities recover and reopen, cultural and heritage experiences and programs and festivals and galleries and museums and all these wonderful things that will come back will also help bring back the opportunity to connect into this demographic for planning and for engagement and for opportunity. So connecting to the traveler is really important as well. And it really comes down to the planning and the budgeting and the marketing and how it will allow you to have the future growth. We all know you're all doing planning. We all know that you're looking at potentially limited budgets or reallocated funds or new funding models in order to run your organization, run your cultural institution, work within your DMO structure. And with that, there really needs to be a reassessment and also sometimes just going back to basics to ensure that as you're marketing to the cultural traveler, that you're really looking at all the resources that are critical to the strategies, not only to engage today, but to look at the long-term goals of the industry and the opportunities they're going to provide. So with that, there are many industry connections to consider, whether it's professional organizations that you see here on the screen that are mainly US based, but also do have a lot of international, a lot of international resources or international outposts as well, and also international and domestic programs. Each of these industry connections are just a sampling of what there is to do and to work within a marketing program. I'll give you an example. If you're working with IAPA, the International Association of Attractions and Parks organization, their international network is really broad and wide. And it not only includes attractions, which are in cultural destinations, but also museums and curation and content, no different than the American Alliance of Museums does. So really the opportunity to connect on the brand initiatives or the marketing initiatives within cultural and heritage tourism programs exists in those spaces, but then to feed it forward, IANTA, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, while based here in the United States, has very rich and diverse connections with all the other Native tribal organizations around the world. As we know, the ability to have diversity, equity, and inclusion also includes the Native American tribal programs here in the United States. And a lot of work is being done to ensure that programs are built around that so that the economic viability for all cultural heritage assets and experiences is provided to all. Well, if you're on a limited budget, working with digital marketing, as we know, is the key for many, many institutions today, and to be able to have a broader reach. So cultural and heritage experiences are economic benefits to a community. How is that possible? Well, not only them coming into your community and experiencing one or two current top level cultural heritage experiences or programs, but the new product that's being developed and the new opportunities, as Stephanie showed, and as Stephanie and Carol and Anela and Diana will be talking about, that are evolving today that don't even exist, which is really exciting. So to feed all these wonderful new opportunities at a very, very cost-effective way, this is just a sampling of the dozens of ticketing opportunities and consumer portals that exist today that you don't have to create yourself, that you can plug and play very, very affordably to make sure that your products are being positioned to the travelers or even to your local market so that you can actually engage and build stronger overnight stays as a DMO or as a destination, or as an organization, you can get a greater fan base and a throughput into your attraction or your cultural experience. So the approach is very simple. Many different resources exist in order to help economic development in the cultural and heritage space. It's all about brainstorming and really looking outside the current frame. We're all dealing with many different things coming at us in many different directions every single hour of the day in our world today. It is the information age of consumption by our consumer, the cultural heritage traveler, but also how to get them off their sofas or out of their communities and get it back into their cars or back on a plane or on a train and really enjoy all that's around them. So draw that plan and review it again. Collaborate with those in your community and in your cultural areas. Utilize all the marketing tools that you have in your current toolkit, but also reach out and try some new tools that you've never thought of using before, or you thought that wouldn't actually be appropriate to your business. And really always maintain a clear focus to the mission of your business and frame your plan around your own cultural and heritage program, your destination, and be true to that mission. Because the moment that you venture off from that mission and really go more into a commercial area that you're uncomfortable with, that could also really have a detriment to what you're trying to accomplish as a destination or as a cultural and heritage program or a cultural and heritage experience. So that's top line for myself. You have three other folks here you're going to be hearing from today. Thank you so very much for your time. And we'll have some Q&A a little bit later. Back to you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Richard. Before we hear from Carol, please do feel free to pose any questions in the Q&A. We will be fielding questions later on today during the webinar. So please do, if you have any questions, please post them for our panelists. So now you'll hear from Carol Hay. Take it over, Carol.
Good evening. I hope everyone is feeling great. Let me just start this. Right, so it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all and to have the opportunity to speak to you. And I'll be approaching this from a slightly different angle from Richard, which is what you want. You know, if we've got all these speakers here tonight, for me it's night, for some of you it's morning, but if we have all of us here tonight from different corners, then you want a different narrative. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, the need to change the narrative, diversify the story, and really look at how non-majority cultural inclusion can enhance the visitor experience. And what I'm saying is that we'll see so many examples today of the different subsectors and groups out there, and tourism should actually be a truly inclusive experience. But there are groups, societies, members of the demographics who will say to you, I don't always feel included. I don't always feel as if tourism is for me. And we need to change that narrative, because that really is not what tourism is about. So first of all, when we talk about the non-majority, what are we referring to in our societies? Well, we find that in tourism industry, the non-majority, the segments of our society that don't always have a voice are women, young people, those with visible and invisible disabilities, indigenous communities, and also those underrepresented in key tourism roles and sectors. These are people who say tourism is in my community, it's in my life, but I don't always see how it can actually benefit me. And I don't always understand how I can be a part of the tourism narrative. And we all know that if people don't feel included, if they don't feel a part of that story, then it builds resentments in communities, and they see tourism as something that is coming to take from them rather than give to them. So what we want to do is to encourage, the governments, the businesses, the various groups to really look at tourism as what it is, an entity to share the culture, the heritage, the vibe, the spirit of people and their communities. So if we change the narrative, then there's so many things that need to be influenced and need to be looked at in tourism. First of all, let's look at the economy, the environment and communities. When we look at making changes to tourism, to culture and heritage, all of these elements will need to be taken into account. Equality, diversity, and inclusion. We also need to look at the preservation of cultural heritage, because, when we look at today's generation, the millennials, they don't always have the opportunity to engage what some of us have engaged with where tourism is concerned. We also need to look at tourism moving from, and certainly the preservation of culture and heritage, being seen less as a financial burden, a strain on the government purse, and look at how we can actually change it into the economic asset that it is for communities. And also we need to talk about something that's come up quite a bit globally, and that's that whole shift from cultural appropriation to cultural appreciation. So if we look at heritage and culture, what type of impact did this have on communities? Many of us in this business of tourism would have seen signs from all over the world where they say, tourists, go home. Tourists, you're not welcome. And this is partly because a number of really important heritage sites, it is felt that they are being destroyed by the visitors. We see pictures of the pyramids, and we see litter and garbage strewn around. We see people who are in the business of tourism, cruise ships come into ports, go to heritage and cultural sites, but then we hear the community saying, I'm not benefiting, none of this money is staying with me. So if we're looking at culture and heritage and the role that governments and business can play and how this can change the life of communities, then we have to drill down and see what exactly does the community need, the economy, the environment, every aspect, to truly see the need to preserve their cultural heritage and to also feel included and to be able to have a sustainable living from it. Also, equality, diversity, and inclusion. Again, when we look at cultural heritage and we look at tourism and we look at the business opportunities, so often we hear communities saying, I see examples, I see ways to attract overseas investors. I see the incentives that they're receiving. I see the support that they're receiving. But how can I, someone in the community, get that type of support? How can I feel that I'm being treated with the same value as investors, as visitors, as organizations, as associations? It's my home, it's my heritage, it's my people, but I don't always feel as if there's a place for me. So in looking at the community, in looking at the people and the preservation of their heritage, their culture, their narrative, what they deliver, it's how do we create the platforms so that even the small micro business feels that they can be a part of it, that they can contribute also. And these are some of the real issues out there. And one of the things I've really learned to understand about the preservation of cultural heritage. Yes, it is delivered best through the local people, but I have honestly found that sometimes we do need to bring in international experts and others to work with the communities. Why? Because sometimes you can be so close to the issue, you don't always see it as a tourism product or unique offering. And I realize that sometimes the things that the locals take for granted because it's part of their traditions, it's part of their meal, it's part of their national dress, their upbringing. You know, you don't always see what this translates to a visitor and what this means to a visitor. So in order to preserve cultural heritage and to also present it in such a way that it benefits communities and it benefits everyone in that story, in that tourism value chain, it's important to bring all the minds, the personalities, the skills, the knowledge together so we can understand the importance of preserving culture, bringing the community in on the act, looking at the economic impact, preserving the environment, and working together to have the right model that everyone feels a part of and sees the benefit of. Now, I included this image because last year I had the wonderful opportunity to go to Nigeria for the first time. It was to attend the Akwaba travel market. And it was a great experience because I'm of Caribbean heritage, but of course my ancestors are from Africa. And to go to Africa and to go to Nigeria and to do the tours and to visit Badagry and to explore the slave route and the entire cultural heritage behind it was a wonderful experience. But one of the things that concerned me during that experience was that I didn't do any research, so I'm not speaking with authority on it, but I didn't see enough investment in the environment to protect and to preserve the cultural heritage. And sites like these, like the Badagry slave route, have a massive emotional pull to the descendants of the enslaved people like myself. It tells such a story, such a narrative. So if we're to preserve these great assets that tell the journey and the story of people 400 years ago, then it will need financial input so that it continues in its legacy. And these are some of the things that really need to be addressed globally about moving from a financial burden, which is what it may feel like sometimes, to an economic asset where the investment is there to preserve, to educate, and to ensure the legacy lives on. So I just wanted to share that picture because for me it was a living example of something so important to millions of people. We did some research and over 500,000 enslaved people passed through there 400 years ago and walked down to the shores of the point of no return. Heritage like that needs to be protected. It tells such a story. Another thing that I just wanted to touch on in this discussion is the whole issue of cultural appropriation. And we've seen many things come up in the news about this. And I maintain that if we work with communities and put in the investment and all the elements needed for them to own their culture, their heritage, to protect it, then it will provide a level of empowerment that will more gear others towards the appreciation of these cultures rather than trying to take over, take it away. Collaboration is key. We need everyone to be a part of it, but at the same time, we also need the communities to feel that they can still hold on to what they have, share it, own it, but at the same time, share it in such a way that it's appreciated across the globe. I've got two examples here. One is top fashion designer Stella McCartney. She created a range of clothes, you know, from African prints and fabrics, and it created quite a bit of controversy. And I think one of the issues when people suggest that certain practices are cultural appropriation is that we don't always know the backstory behind it, and we don't always know what's been done to support the communities. And when you bear in mind that Stella McCartney's outfits sell for thousands of pounds and dollars, and yet on the other hand, you'll have people going into the craft markets and bartering and badgering, the local producers down to the last pound or penny or dollar for their clothes, you can understand why people might feel, well, advantage is being taken of them because they just don't have the opportunity to earn that kind of money from selling an outfit. So that's why it's important to empower people, to bring value, share the culture, so that we are able to create a more sustainable approach to cultural heritage. And a favorite one of mine, being of Jamaican heritage, was when IKEA was selling jerk chicken with green peas and rice. And anyone who knows what rice and peas looks like, for the people whose dish this was, they spoke out strongly against it. And that's the humorous side of it. But it's again that if we're going to do things, it's about working with the community, involving them, and ensuring that the right message gets across about what is truly valuable to cultures and to Indigenous people. So let's move on quickly. The role of government and business and the knowledge communities. If we really want to preserve heritage, empower communities, there are certain mechanisms that need to be in place. Destinations, businesses need to look at funding and financing streams, training and development. If we go into communities and we say to them, all of these opportunities exist, if we don't provide the training and the development and the knowledge and the networking, we're not actually helping these non-majority groups, people who may not be exposed to the business side of it, but have the unique credentials. We need to look at capacity building, incubator hubs, so that people can go and learn and understand, coaching and mentoring, distribution channels. And Richard touched on some of the channels in his presentation when he spoke about some of the different organizations and portals that can eventually help communities and individuals and business to promote their cultural heritage experiences. We need to ensure that there's a level playing field, that there really are fair opportunities for communities to be a part of this, and moral leadership. Always think about the good of the community, preserving their heritage, preserving their values, and respecting them for who they are, and understanding that we're all from different parts of the world. We do things differently, and each aspect is unique to each culture. And what will be some of the benefits for us, and how will the whole visitor experience be impacted? Well, once we work towards some of the things that Richard has spoken about, I've spoken about, and others will address, we will see a safe and welcoming environment and communities where there isn't resentment, there isn't a level of poverty that makes people uncomfort, there isn't a level of displacement of the people. Also, cultural appreciation will mean that there is a recognition of other people's cultures, their values, and being respectful. We've seen so many issues of people going into religious areas of spiritual meaning to communities, and really taking inappropriate selfies, inappropriate statements. So by understanding and by shaping in the cultural experience, we can rid some of these intolerances. Also transformational experiences, so that when people go back, they can really talk about it from a heart and soul experience. Also, there'll be the opportunity for visitors to invest in communities, to go back and to say, what are your needs? How can I help? Repeat visits, endorsements, going on the user-generated sites and chats, and really sharing their experiences and what they've learned from the community about their heritage, their culture, their values. Volunteerism as well. A lot of what we want to do will need support from others. And if there are people with the skills, the knowledge and experience, then volunteerism is a great way to give back to communities, to help them to see the value in what they have. that was a quick presentation, but in closing, a fine example to me of cultural heritage and really embracing the heart and soul of who they are was Ghana and the year of the return, and how they reached out to their own diaspora, to the descendants of the enslaved people, to the wider world and community. You know, that was an excellent example of sharing their history, the culture, the values, and promoting what the people have and what made them unique. So as we continue in our quest and moving towards cultural heritage and the empowerment of communities, we'll look at these examples, look at these best practices, and see how we can continue to spread the word. So thank you so much for listening to the presentation, and I'm available to answer questions a bit later.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for all of that wonderful information. So now we're going to go ahead and move on, and we're going to hear from Ella. Take it over, Ella.
Let me just quickly share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So welcome everyone. Good evening. Evening for me. I'm in Hungary. I think my presentation will tie in well with what Carol was talking about. I am an archaeologist and a cultural heritage professional by training. So today I will talk about the importance of community and stakeholder involvement in cultural heritage tourism, more specifically about how and why we can safeguard archaeological destinations and living culture through tourism development. And let me just go to the next slide. So coming from archaeology and heritage management, there are many controversies we face regarding tourism development. These debates usually circle the conservation of tangible heritage, by that I mean archaeological sites and physical spaces, as well as the safeguarding of intangible and living heritage. You know, we have all heard how mass tourism, for example, threatens the archaeological structures, the artifacts, the flora and the fauna. And this is indeed a constant concern in archaeological conservation that we face. And there's also concern about the commercial approach that tourism brings and whether that threatens cultural integrity. And adjacent communities are, as we have mentioned, before in the previous presentations, are sadly very often excluded from tourism and because of tourism. And in many areas of the world, people from you know, a special connection with archaeological sites and heritage spaces. Indigenous communities want to use the sites still for certain ceremonies. Adjacent communities want to share and relive their memories. So people really need to be involved. And if tourism development projects don't pay attention to adjacent communities, indigenous communities, and just in general the vulnerable groups, it can trigger a disconnect with spaces and traditions, which is a genuine, legitimate concern in archaeology today. So obviously, based on these concerns, there are a lot of scholars in academia and archaeology and institutions from a variety of disciplines who inevitably ask the question, if tourism causes such problems, why should we support it? Now, usually, instead of finding ways of collaboration, archaeology, anthropology, and disciplines related to natural resource management even don't often engage with tourism development, when they actually have a crucial role in shaping a new sustainable perspective in the tourism industry, just like how Carol said. And here's why. I'd like to mention the case of Indian Church Village in northern Belize. That's where I worked for over 7 years now. And the village is located next to the Lamanai Archaeological Reserve, which sees between 40 to 120 visitors a day, depending on the season. And obviously these are numbers from before COVID. We don't know how it is going to be. But what is interesting is that the visitation and the number of overnight stays in Indian Church Village itself, which is right next to the site, are nearly zero. And I am not exaggerating, that's the number. There are no visitors in Indian Church Village other than seasonal researchers who stay there while they're doing their fieldwork. Now, people from Indian Church used to live on the site of Lamanai. They have a very special connection with the site. They view it as their home. Tourism is also the primary, if not the only, stable source of income in the area. Yet people barely have opportunities and the support to share their stories and to participate in tourism. And this has been causing the village residents to disconnect from their heritage. I see it happening. I worked there for 7 years. They see less and less cultural and monetary value in their own home and in their own traditional skills. So involving the community would allow people to freely engage with their living heritage and see value in the traditional artisanal techniques, and also to, you know, share them with the next generation if we're thinking about sustainability and safeguarding culture. And from a tourism perspective, as my colleagues mentioned before, tour guides would be able to share local narratives. They would be able to show local experiences. They would be able to provide more value to the visitor. And then, of course, hotel owners, restaurant owners, artisans would also benefit economically as well. So I have a few pictures from Indian Church Village from the times when I worked there. And now all this seems, you know, quite simple. It's simple to say, but as you know, we've all said before, it is not happening. And the reason is that it isn't easy to make sure that an archaeological site is managed correctly. You know, there are safety and conservation issues that don't allow certain activities that village residents might want to pursue. It's a very complex discipline, you know, heritage site management, and of course archaeology as well, and the conservation. However, this is why collaboration is so important. Heritage management, tourism development, researchers and adjacent communities need to work towards finding a common ground, need to see what is allowed, what is not allowed, what would threaten physical conservation and what wouldn't. So another issue that heritage management and archaeology also deals with is physical destruction. Not always, but very often, communities adjacent to sites and heritage spaces are rural communities where families live on a few dollars a day. To sustain themselves, people are growing crops, they're grazing cattle, and go hunting and fishing on sites, which can be very destructive. But there is no other accessible alternative. For example, on the site of Inca Yacta in Bolivia, Sustainable Preservation Initiative, it's an NGO, involved the local community and provided business opportunities for artisans and people in tourism, and people stopped these destructive practices. Then there's also exclusion from site development, tourism development, and decision-making processes, and tourism profits, of course, that can also lead to vandalism or negligence, which is a major issue in heritage management. You know, we can look at the Domboshava rock art in South Africa during the 1990s, where adjacent communities were not involved in tourism development, and they poured paint over ancient paintings in protest. So yeah, to answer why we should support cultural heritage tourism, we have to see that exclusion from tourism and economic opportunities are a relevant and urgent threat to tangible and intangible cultural heritage that heritage tourism can help us to mitigate. And, you know, without, without stating that mass tourism, for example, is not an issue, we have to think about the responsible and the conscious and inclusive development of heritage tourism. And for that responsibility to happen, tourism needs to collaborate with archaeologists, local institutions, local researchers from different disciplines, adjacent communities, and other stakeholders as well. We can involve communities in archaeology and other relevant research and share information. We can also focus on education and capacity building in tourism, business management and marketing, like how my colleague said before me. But most importantly, we have to raise awareness of the connection between heritage management, archaeology, anthropology, and tourism. We are not against each other. We have to create dynamic networks. Archaeological knowledge and archaeological information is needed in tourism. Tourism can aid archaeological conservation and the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. So we need to create dynamic networks such as CHEA. And I think my presentation is quite short. This is the end. Thank you very much for listening, and back to Stephanie.
Thank you, Ella, so very much. All right, now we're going to hear from Diana McIntyre-Pike, and I am going to share her screen, her presentation. All right, let's see. Go. Diana?
Well, thank you very much. I am really excited about this forum that we have, and I'm proud and honored to be a part or partner member of the Cultural Heritage Economic Alliance. And we are going to work together and make the world go crazy over cultural heritage tourism, which is an exciting thing to happen. Now, I just wanted to start off by saying that we have decided to establish a brand with the diaspora. The diaspora from UK presented community tourism as community economic tourism. I'm sure you'll be happy to hear that, Stephanie.
Yes.
Using the word economic, because that is what we want to do. So people can really benefit directly and indirectly from cultural heritage through community tourism. But the first thing that has to happen is that they have to be helped to recognize their assets that can provide a visitor experience. We're not developing it for just a visitor. We're showing them how they can value their community and understand what assets they have, and for them to see how they can offer that community experience to any visitor who wants to know about their culture. So we do training in entrepreneurship and how to move forward as a business person within the community and organize themselves, and then they can participate in a marketing network that we will provide. Next. So every community has the unique assets that can interest and engage visitors in a wide array of niche markets. You know, it's quite amazing when you go into a community and the first thing that they will say in the Jamaica way, and I'll interpret it, nothing a gwan for me. They said, nothing a gwan for me. I said, what do you mean? They said, nothing is going on here. This place has nothing to offer. We need to get out of here. And when we're finished doing the training, it's a different story altogether. They didn't realize they had so many assets that were unique. They didn't know about the heritage of the church. They didn't know about the heritage of the school. They knew nothing. The young people are being brought up in an empty world in a sense, because all they can talk about is what is happening now and not what happened in the past. Okay, move on. Next. So the visitors enjoy the authentic experiences. And I'm saying this very carefully. There's no need to create attractions. And I'm saying this to our government people, because what they're telling people is that you have to create an attraction. We don't have to create an attraction. We are an attraction. You can take somebody and market them. I can take anybody in the community, write a profile of them, and I have people who will come just to see them. So the family can be an attraction. The church is an attraction. School is an attraction. You don't need to create it. And there's no need for costly infrastructure. Next. So to give you an idea, you have the heritage, you have the environment, you have the culture, you have the craft, the talents, the personalities, and the businesses and daily life. All of that. Now, when we go into a community and we tell them about all of that, that we can bring business to them. And just to give you an example, when we bring a tour into one community, we have a visit to the hairdressing salon. That's a business. And the hairdresser tells the visitor about her salon. And the persons who are in the salon are able to tell why they go to her. And then the visitors ask questions, and they're very excited about it, by the way. And we give each stop money. We divide up the money, so each stop gets money. And we have now where they go from there to the basic school, and then they go to the prep school, and they interact with the teachers and the children. And if they're playing a game like cricket, they want to participate as well. It was not done for the tourists or the visitor. It was done as their normal daily life. That's what they want to experience. Then from there, they go to the church, and they look around the church, and they talk to the people involved with the church, and they see the craft as well. But the craft people come out. They want local craft. And with all due respect, they don't want China, Taiwan craft. They want the real McCoy, the thing that is made by the people. That is the essence of it. And then from there, now we go and have lunch at the community restaurant, where we talk about the menu, we tell them what is involved. And then after that, now we give them a dancing session. And that, you know, I'm known as the dancing queen of the Caribbean. So I go and I start off the dancing once I'm there, and we get the bartender and everybody involved. And they participate. And then we take a little walk down to the shop where we have the plantain tarts and gizzards, and that's dessert. But when they go and they see all the array of different things, they want to buy more. But the essence of this now is that when they have that experience, that's just one example of a community I've just given you. When they have that experience, they go back to the hotel, and these are from All Inclusive, and they tell the guests about it, and they want to all come. So they plan no more trips, and they come and they have a party at the bar, the community bar. Oh, forgot to mention that. They go to the community bar too. So they drink the real rum punch, 1 of sour, 2 of sweet, 3 of strong, and 4 weak. Not the one you just throw things in. This is a real McCoy. And they enjoy going back to the people, and they establish a relationship with them. So we have a program called Pick a Project While on Vacation and Adopt a Village While on Vacation. Well, what is happening now, we got 9 groups from the Pick a Project. And we also have now the Adopt a Village, which we're going to focus on, because for us to do that, we have to know exactly what they have. So through the power of local culture and community tourism, every village can organize itself as a business and achieve individual and collective economic advantage. So the village becomes a business, and we teach them how to be businesslike, how to approach it and have a business plan, because they cannot get any help if they don't have a business plan. And that is the whole idea of putting it together as a business. Can move on. So we share the experiences. Just to give you an example, these children here were showing him how to, guess how to do the drumming. He was fascinated with the drum. Now, who better to teach him than the children? So we involve everybody, the older people and the younger people. Come on. And the dancing that takes place. This is in one of the remote villages in Manchester, Jamaica. And they're showing them how to move with the dancing that they provide. Can move on. And then making bami. Cassava, that's in a remote village as well. They are fascinated. They help to make it, and then they eat it afterwards with our traditional dish, ackee and saltfish. Well, so when a village becomes interested in its potential of community tourism, its leaders receive guidance in setting up a committee to oversee training, planning, and management. Now, this is a very important part of it. There is no point in marketing a community if you don't have a village plan. And it's rural villages and urban villages we're talking about. For them to be able to see exactly what they need and where they want to go. And this promotes investment. We have a lot of diaspora people living overseas, like for Caribbean diaspora, we have more Caribbean people out of the Caribbean than that live in the Caribbean. And this is exciting because they have the money. They have the money. Even in this time, they have the money. But what they're not prepared to do is to throw away the money. They want to see tangible projects from communities that they can invest in, and especially the ones that they come from. And when you do that now, we can do Stephanie, we can organize a project study tour where people can come and see exactly what it is that they're investing in. And this is a very important part in one. So the Community Tourism Steering Committee is responsible for developing a charter and an action plan and for assuring implementation. There's no point having a plan if you don't have it implemented. And we don't want to have somebody else implement it. We are asking them to participate in the implementation of it. They must take ownership of their community, and we do a nice brochure for them. That's a marketing support that we give. And then they're able to market their community to their friends and family overseas and to the local people, because a lot of people in the communities in Jamaica, corporate people, etc., they do not know the communities. They only know where they are. So we have come up with a program which we are going to do the official launch of, especially in this time with the COVID. We're calling it Dryland Tourism. Dryland Tourism Vacations and Tours. Now, dryland tourism in Jamaica, when you are visiting your own country, you say you're a dryland tourist. So everybody will understand that. Now, I found that the Caribbean people want my brand here with this dryland tourism. And what that will do is give the locals an opportunity to get to know the product, the hotels, the guest houses, the homestays, and all that we have to offer. And I'm getting a lot of interest in that, because some of our community people have never seen the sea. They live in the mountains, but they've never left the mountains. You know, I was shocked when I was told they don't want to know what the sea looked like. So, I mean, we take things for granted. No, it's a serious thing. We have to educate the population on the product that we're offering. We can't, and they'll talk about it. They'll have relatives overseas and say, oh yes, I went here, I went there. Who better to do it than them? And so we want to take the product to the communities, and for the communities to get funding to have, for them to stay, and then they can interact with the visitors there. So the Community Steering Committee will pave the way forward. And I would like to just end there by saying we are adamant that we want people to understand who we are and what we can. And if you want that information, who better than our Cultural Heritage Economic Alliance team, because we have a great team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Yeah. And for our audience, if you can't tell, we have a very passionate team that loves the work that we all engage in. So what I'd like to do with you all is share a little bit about, I'm going to share my screen with you once again. Okay, give me 1 second, please. Oops. Okay. But please feel free if you have questions for our panelists. Okay. Let me just share. And here we go. All right. Okay, can you see my screen? Everyone?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, great. So I want to, as you've heard the various perspectives on cultural heritage tourism from our panelists, I would like to take a few moments to talk a little more about cultural heritage tourism from a micro-local perspective. And the work that I do through the Cultural Heritage Alliance for Tourism. And what I'm sharing with you right now is a model for local stakeholder engagement. And you've heard many of my colleagues, talk about the importance of local stakeholder engagement because they are the keepers of the culture and the history and the heritage in destinations. So for destinations who are not yet engaging their local stakeholders, this is a tremendous opportunity for you to start to position your destination through cultural heritage tourism, and by really taking the time to get to know your local stakeholders and exploring how you can start to engage them in your marketing efforts. So what I want to share with you right now is, again, our approach to local stakeholder engagement. For the past 5 years, we have implemented this model in the South Florida area. So I just want to walk you through it very briefly. And then when I'm done, I'm going to show you a couple brief videos that actually show you what it looks like, what local stakeholder engagement looks like through cultural heritage tourism. So our destinations and our governments, you all are the nucleus. You all are the ones that market to inbound travelers. You control the marketing dollars that dictate who's going to be marketed within your destinations and how you're going to be marketing to your inbound travelers. And so that's why you are the centerpiece, because it's going to require investment from destinations and governments in order to properly engage your local stakeholders. So let's start with the local stakeholder. Let me see, I'm covering here. One of the things, as a result of having numerous conversations over the past 3 months with various DMOs who have reached out to the National Blacks in Travel and Tourism Collaborative to really talk about what they need to do from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint, but also from engaging their local stakeholders. And so where I tell you to start, it's important for you to get to know your community. You cannot really successfully launch a cultural heritage tourism program or start to market cultural heritage tourism without understanding your local community and knowing who your stakeholders are. So what we like to say, to DMOs or those who really want to start working with their local stakeholders is, one, you must become an insider. And what do I mean by that? Again, I recognize that many of the marketing teams, the salespersons that work at DMOs or even, within city governments, they don't venture outside of their office, into these local neighborhoods that provide these rich, authentic cultural heritage experiences. So you need to become an insider. You need to leave the desk and you need to leave the office and venture into these communities. And when you go to these communities, you need to approach the locals with authenticity. You need to show them that you have a true interest in learning about the community, learning who the stakeholders are, the major players, from the small businesses to the pastors at the churches, to the local museum owners, to the local restaurant owners. You must become an insider and you must approach the community with authenticity. The other thing that is really important is not to break promises when you are engaging with the local stakeholders. Don't overpromise what you're able to deliver to them as far as how you can help them with their marketing or how you can drive tourists and dollars into their communities without really having a plan on how you're going to do that. Because the last thing you want to do is to break a promise, because then you're breaking trust with your local stakeholders. And again, if you have not ventured into your local communities to patronize the little soul food restaurant or the Caribbean restaurant, or to go to the local art gallery, or to visit one of the historical churches or other buildings within those local neighborhoods, you should do that. Okay, so become an insider. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to do a destination scan, an asset scan, again, to really identify who are the local stakeholder assets that are available to become a part of your cultural heritage tourism plan or program. You need to find out who are those local businesses. And oftentimes, again, when we're meeting with DMOs, they don't know who the local Black or brown small businesses are within those heritage neighborhoods, or within those underserved neighborhoods, again, where there's a lot of rich cultural heritage. So you need to do a scan and identify those small businesses and those community assets that you can possibly engage in your marketing efforts. And then once you identify them, then you need to assess them. And what do we mean by assessing? Assessing their level of tourism readiness, because you want to identify which of those local community assets can you start to engage within your marketing strategies. And why is this important? As Richard has already said, and Carol and some of my colleagues, is that cultural heritage tourism is one of the fastest growing segments of the travel industry. And when cultural travelers come to a destination, they're going to stay longer and spend more money in that destination to have cultural heritage experiences. Research also says that more than 60% of African American leisure travelers determine which destinations they will visit based on the number of cultural heritage experiences available to them. So that's why it's so important for destinations and governments to take the time to do a destination scan, to identify your community assets, and then to assess their level of tourism readiness, so that you know which restaurants can you start to market, which local attractions can you start to market, which tour operators can you start to promote and market their experiences, okay? So investing in your stakeholders is key, so that you can start to prepare them to participate in your local tourism ecosystem. So how do you prepare your local stakeholders to become tourism ready or to participate in their tourism ecosystem? Well, one, you can provide training, and that's something that CHEA provides, business enhancement training, because we recognize that a lot of those small local stakeholders, they consider themselves mom and pop businesses, and that's how they operate. So they really, many of them don't understand what the tourism industry is and how they can become positioned as tourism attractions. They also probably need assistance in further enhancing their business from a marketing perspective, making certain that they have an online presence, making certain that they're set up to receive customer reviews. Maybe they need to train their staff in customer service. So making certain that these local community assets receive business enhancement training as well as tourism readiness training, okay? Because once they receive this training, then through our model, what we're able to do is to partner with these different local stakeholders, your local restaurant, your local heritage sites, your local museums, your local B&Bs, even local residents that can be trained as cultural heritage tour guides, which will then create some job opportunities for locals. So we partner with these different community assets, and we curate cultural heritage tour experiences, okay? So what this is doing is, one, as a destination, you're now creating new cultural heritage experiences and tour products that you can market to the cultural and African-American travelers, okay? But also, you are now positioning your local stakeholders to make money in the industry, because you're driving tourist foot traffic and dollars into their businesses as well as their communities. So it's a win-win partnership with the DMOs as well as with the local stakeholders in your destination, okay? So through these cultural heritage experiences, you're able to create economic opportunity for those small businesses. You're helping to preserve culture and heritage. How? Because many of these Black neighborhoods are being gentrified. And so there's a lot of new buildings that are going up, but through preserving the culture and heritage through the tours, you're able to help make certain that the history and the culture is not erased. And through your marketing, you're helping to amplify these small businesses so that inbound travelers, domestic and international, will know about them before they arrive into the destination, and they can pre-book with the tour operator or with the local restaurant or with the local museum to include them as part of their itineraries when visiting your destination. Also, what we found through this tour model is that because we're able to allow visitors to actually put their feet on the ground in many of these underserved neighborhoods, it's dispelling stereotypes about people in those neighborhoods, because they have an opportunity to meet the locals, the local business owners, and even the locals that are walking the street, you know, to learn about them and, you know, to see that these communities are walkable. Oftentimes, when we have local folks on the cultural heritage tours who have never been to certain neighborhoods, they always say, you know what, I will return to this restaurant. I can come back to this community because I see, you know, it's a safe place to visit. And, you know, it's someplace I can come and bring others to patronize the local businesses. And most importantly, you know, it's creating diversity, equity, and inclusion for your destination by creating opportunities for small Black and brown businesses, cultural organizations, and even residents from these underserved neighborhoods to now actively be able to participate and profit in their local tourism ecosystem. So what I'd like to do is just show you a couple of videos that show you what it looks like, what our tour model, you know, how we've been able to create tangible tour products through this tour model. So I'm going to show you one of the tours that we curated in Miami called the Little Haiti Cultural Heritage Tour. Well, actually, no, this covers several of the tours in the Miami area. Carol, can you see the video?
No, no, I can't.
Okay, I'm sorry, let me change my screen. Okay, how about now?
No, I'm not seeing it, and I don't know if anyone can advise in the chat, if any of our audience can advise, but I'm not seeing it.
Stop sharing your
Are you able
screen.
to see it? Anyone?
I think
No.
you may need to stop sharing your screen and then reshare it again where the video is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Let's try this one more time. Okay. Are we seeing it now?
Yes. No sound,
Okay,
but we are seeing it.
All right, that was one video that showcased, was a compilation of various cultural heritage tours that we curated throughout the Miami area. Miami has several heritage neighborhoods if you've ever visited. And so, as you can see, through curating those cultural heritage tour products, we were able to hire locals, as you saw the folks, the tour guides in the black and red shirts. And we now are able to provide cultural heritage tour products for the DMOs to promote to groups, you know, family reunions, conferences, and even to their inbound travelers who are seeking those authentic local cultural heritage experiences. So there is a way for every destination to curate cultural heritage tour products as a way to showcase the rich culture and heritage in your destination, but also to create economic opportunity for those small local businesses within your destination that you may not have yet engaged within your marketing efforts. So let's see how we're doing on time. So I won't share the second video because I want to provide an opportunity for Q&A, but also let me say that you can visit CHEAglobal.org and you can download a brochure that has more information about each of our panelists, as well as you can, if you like more information about the what's been presented today, you can send us an email and we'll be happy to follow up. So right now I'm going to take a few questions. Okay. All right, I saw a question from Don Drew. All right, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this question says, diversity and inclusion and equity in the business will be fostered by developing experiences that appeal to and attract a broad and diverse group of travelers. It is wonderful to have affluent travelers. What are the plans for the industry to diversify price points and attractions to open doors for people with lesser incomes to participate in travel? And I'm going to throw that over to you, Richard, to address.
Certainly, it's a really good question. Thanks, Dawn, for that question. In the industry, certainly, this is globally, not only here in the United States. What a lot of the cultural institutions are doing and the cultural experiences are doing are understanding that they do need to have, local programs, outside of their student and educational programs, where most of the institutions through the International Museums Association and other programs like IAPA, protocols have been put into place to provide access and open door access. So education is in one portal, where a lot of university programs or student programs, by just showing your student ID or being of a certain age group, you immediately get a substantial discount and access to that museum or cultural experience. And we're also talking performing arts and visual arts and symphonies and orchestras. We're just not talking about cultural institutions and local village craft makers. It's this wider range of cultural heritage experiences. Point two is that local programs have been established around the world to provide tickets and access, pre-ticketed programs in various neighborhoods and districts. And one prime example would be right here in San Francisco, where I live. We have an actual office through the local arts council and through the city program, where cultural institutions, big and small, can provide tickets and access points for programs in education, and people basically go and check them out just like they do a library book. It's very, very simple, and it's very, very turnkey. So providing various portals, and a lot of cultural institutions, in closing, also do local days, meaning local access for those local visitors and regional visitors who may not have the ability and the means to buy a general admission ticket or a specific program. And they're also taking the programs out of their cultural institutions to those neighborhoods and to those districts as well. For the international traveler coming in, normally it's a little bit different because they are coming in and they have the means to travel into market. So normally their price points are through the distribution channels and other portals that are available, but happy to talk offline and provide other insights or hear other ideas from the panelists.
Thank you, Richard. This next question is for Carol and Diana, or perhaps one of you will take it just for the sake of time. I will give this one to you, Diana. Music is a huge part of the Caribbean's cultural heritage, yet promotion of Jamaican music in particular to tourists seems to start and end with Bob Marley, who we love. To promote cultural heritage to the diaspora and all tourists, is there not a need to bring this up to date? There seems to be such potential here, but also some resistance. Is it a genuine opportunity? Is it a genuine opportunity, do you think? And if so, how best to develop it?
Well,
Diana?
Well, I'm glad that question came up, because that's also a big passion of ours. So we are promoting entertainment from the communities, and one of the things that people don't know is that we have mentor music. which is only from Jamaica, not any other Caribbean island. You know, Trinidad has Calypso, we've all embraced Calypso, but Mento is profound here, and only few communities have it. And we have some other African cultural dances that we are promoting, which are not known by visitors or the hotels. So that's why I was saying that we need to do the education for both the people in the industry, the residents of Jamaica, to come and discover these talents. So we are doing something about it. We've established a program for village tourism. Village tourism is not only for rural villages, but for urban villages. We must not forget that we have urban villages. And with that now, we're able to describe the experience. And you can do a hopping tour. You know, you can go to this village in the morning, then go to another one in the afternoon. We do that for the cuisine as well. So we're doing something about it. I want to assure that person that it is being done, and we're going to do it for the whole Caribbean.
Great, thank you, thank you. All right, I have a question for, let's see, Carol. When does promotion of cultural heritage become cultural appropriation? How do we prevent successful cultural attractions becoming stereotypes of local culture as they move into the mainstream?
I think a lot of the decisions that are taken are based off finances. And I think sometimes, you know, we're so focused on the dollar that we almost lose the heritage. And I've been on many tours across the world where I've seen people almost herded like cattle into attractions, etc. And part of this is because of the economic reason behind it. So what's going to be really important going forward is the narrative, the storytelling. And I think a lot of that work can be done before the visitor gets to a destination. I still laugh at years ago, someone said to me, oh, I've been to St. Lucia. And I said, no, they said to me, I've been to Jamaica. And I said, great, where did you stay in Jamaica? And they said, St. Lucia. Now, anyone who knows the Caribbean would know that they're two totally different islands. But what it is that people don't research enough about destinations before they travel. And when they go on experiences, it's, oh, well, let's do this because it's popular. So I think destinations and businesses have a sense of duty to do more in the communication, not just to talk about the sand or the sangria or the rum or the bullfights, but to look more at to what a destination has to offer, tell its story in advance, share a lot more using technology. We need more informed visitors. Now, what we're seeing from what Richard said is that the cultural traveler is more informed, does more research before they travel. We need more people to be like that. And what we're going to find is that when they get into communities, they will understand that sometimes it's not the most popular or the least expensive opportunity that they should experience, but look more at going off the beaten track. And I just quickly wanted to say that's where technology is also going to play a great part, particularly as we're now managing our tourism in an era of COVID. My daughter and I had a quick experience where I think we were in Switzerland. We went to the tourist office, downloaded an app, and this app allowed us to use our own phones to do a walking tour of Switzerland. Opportunities like that create social distancing. It allows you to visit other places that are not necessarily visited by the masses, to explore in your own time and to spend money at your leisure. So we're going to have to use a lot more technology and innovation in telling the story and allowing the visitor to travel off the beaten path. There's a lot more that we can say, but I know that time is of the essence.
All right, thank you, Carol. And the final question, we have so many great questions. What I encourage everyone, please do go to CHEAglobal.org and send us your questions. There's a link where you can contact us on that page, but please do send us your questions so that we can follow up, and we will be happy to follow up with you because these are so many great questions, but we're running out of time. So Ella, this last question is for you. In the wake of the ICH convention, one thing that was agreed on was that there was no agreement on who should be responsible for and own the implementation of systems which would contribute to the safeguarding of intangible heritage. in trying to get this fundamental element right, do you think that the heritage professionals should be on board with each other first before they engage with tourism professionals, or should tourism professionals be part of this deliberation?
I think it's a very complex question, and it kind of highlights a lot of ongoing issues in tourism, archaeology, heritage management. They're referring to the Intangible Cultural Heritage Convention, the UNESCO 2003 Convention in safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. And I think the first part of the question ties in with the different debates about the ownership of culture and who should benefit from this. There are a lot of issues and debates in different locations. I think each case is very different. So first of all, we have to evaluate the local situation. We have to look at the information locally and make decisions based on that. But to answer the second part of your question, while heritage and archaeology is discussing this, tourism is going on. So we cannot ignore the fact that while a lot of heritage bodies don't agree, tourism is going on, and it causes major disadvantage, and it causes the destruction of culture and heritage, which should be essential for heritage bodies to protect in any way. So I think the answer to that would be is to identify problems, identify the local situation, clarify intentions. Do you see tourism being part of the process of safeguarding this culture? If you do, then involve the tourism bodies in the discussion. If you don't see tourism as a discipline, or if you don't see tourism as a potential for economic growth, there can be areas in the world like that, then don't. But if you do see tourism, then yes. If you develop a museum, a community museum, that's not only tourism. You need to involve archaeology, right? To handle archaeological objects properly, and vice versa. So you need to assess, I think, the local situation case by case and make a decision whether you want to involve tourism bodies and heritage tourism in the development process, I think.
So Ella,
Thank
it's like
you.
it's a balance of curators and educators all coming together. Really?
Exactly. Yeah. And you need to see your goals and what you need, and how you can reach that. And if there's space for tourism, then definitely you should involve it, because there's a lot of knowledge that's not being shared, is what I see.
Good. Good.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what I'd like to ask each of our panelists to do before we wrap, if you could just take 30 seconds to give us your final thoughts about cultural heritage tourism and a takeaway for our audience. And what I want to say with our listeners who are still with us, thank you so very much. We know we've gone over time, but we thank you for wanting to engage with us. Please do visit CHEAglobal.org. Please email us if we were not able to get to your question, so that we can have one of our panelists address your question and follow up with you. If you'd like to know more about CHEA and the work that we do in support of governments, destination marketing organizations, and small businesses, you can also email us through the website as well. Please feel free to email me personally at sjones@cheaglobal.org, and we'll be happy to follow up with you. So 30 seconds, Ella. Final thoughts.
Oh, 30 seconds. I think my final thought is that collaboration is key. I'm just going to be short. And that each of the disciplines need to get out of their bubble and initiate collaboration and initiate discussions and share knowledge to make this possible, I think.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Carol, final thoughts.
Yes, a lot of the examples that we gave today were about the Caribbean and Africa and Black culture, but we just want to say that what we've spoken about is universal, and the ideas and the models and the suggestions apply to wherever you are in the world and you have Indigenous groups, diverse groups and communities. What's important is always to put the people first, to have moral leadership, and to protect the environment, the economy and the communities.
Awesome. Thank you. Richard, final words.
As you can see, the topic is broad. The influence of cultural and heritage travelers is diverse, and the conversations need to be ongoing so that education and connections and inspiration are woven through everything that you do, and understanding, as Carol just said as well, it is all about this global impact of travel and the global impact on the local craft maker, all the way up to the corporation that supports it. But knowing that in the center of it all, education, collaboration, and a consistent focus on, making sure that the impact to local communities is at the center of it. That's what cultural heritage experiences is all. It starts with the people in the community in which they welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Diana, final words.
Yes, my final word is that I'm very happy that you have encouraged us to all work together with cultural heritage tourism. And we are committed to doing that, and to let the people who are participating know that if they want information on anything that any of us have said, and you have said it, but I have to reiterate, that we'll be very happy to pass on the information through you. And the focus on community tourism is not on developing the communities for visitors. It is for the people, the lifestyle, because the lifestyle is what encourages people to want to discover them, which is cultural heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. In my final words, again, first I want to say thank you to our dynamic panelists. It's a pleasure working with you all. I also just want to share a couple initiatives that CHEA and the Cultural Heritage Alliance for Tourism are going to be launching in 2021. Tangible opportunities for destination marketing organizations as well as their local stakeholders to become involved. And one is Culture on Shore, which is a technology that we are currently developing. It will be the world's first global marketplace for cultural heritage tours and activities. So if you are a tour operator and you engage in cultural heritage tours, we want to make certain that your tours are showcased on Culture on Shore. If you're a destination or a government, then we want to partner with you because this is a tremendous opportunity to showcase cultural heritage tourism in your destination. You can visit cultureonshore.com to learn more or to request more information. And then finally, I want to say to look forward in 2021 for the National Cultural Heritage Tourism Summit, where we will be bringing speakers such as our panelists and other global and national speakers, thought leaders, to continue this conversation and to really, talk about how we can continue to use cultural heritage tourism as an economic driver for fueling governments, destinations, and small businesses. So again, please go to cheaglobal.org, send us a message, and we'd love to follow up with you or pose your questions so we can get back to you. And I want to say thank you all so very much for tuning in today for our webinar, and we look forward to you joining us on the next one. Continue to be safe, everyone, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.